Hello there, and welcome. This week, I'm going to be talking about cheating on tests. And I thought a lot about switching the two first episodes of the week and starting with how to avoid or how to prevent students from cheating on tests. But I decided to go ahead and keep the pattern I've been doing. And I want to start this episode with a confession. I was rarely tempted to cheat on homework. I didn't necessarily like homework all the time. I found it burdensome, just the way every student sometimes does. But the place I was tempted to cheat was on tests. And the surprising thing is, looking back on my career, it really was that day-to-day work, the homework and the writing and the classroom participation, that really made up the lion's share of my grades. But somehow tests carry this cachet of value. And I think it does for almost everyone. The title Test versus Quiz is interesting because I think quiz feels much less weighty and high stakes than the word test. And I did, when I was in junior high, cheat on a test. There was a science teacher that we had, Mr. Leroy Nix. He was a really remarkable person. He had been in the FBI, but he left for some very interesting reasons that I won't go into now. Not a fault of his, but a heroic nature of his. And he became a science teacher and a basketball coach at the school where I went to junior high school. And he was good friends with my father and just all-around impressive person. So of course, all of us, every student he had, wanted to impress him. We all thought he was awesome because he was. And he gave a test once that we all studied for very hard. And one class took the test before lunch and one class took the test after. And I was in the after lunch class. And while we were walking back from lunch, I overheard one of my fellow students, who was a friend and a very bright young man that I admired deeply, Brian McMath. And he was talking about there was only one question on the test he didn't know the answer to. And he kind of described the question. And when he described the question, I listened very closely. And then right after lunch, I had Mr. Nix's class. So we went and in front of Mr. Nix, not necessarily like right in front of him, but in the room with him so that he could see what I was doing, I looked up the term that had fooled the previous class. And I checked it to make sure of what it meant, and I made sure he knew I knew what it meant. And then we took the test. At the time, I kind of knew that he knew. He gave me a look unlike he had ever given me before or he ever gave me after, and it was this look. Now, if you're not a particularly sensitive student, you don't notice the look. It's the look that says, I can't prove it, but I know you're up to no good. So he knew somehow. He knew that I was trying to legitimize something I had gained in an unfair manner. I got 100 on the test, but it wasn't 100 I was proud of. There was only one question I didn't know the answer to, but I did know the answer because I'd overheard another student talking about it. He didn't bust me. He didn't say anything, but he did bust me, and I busted myself because after that I didn't cheat on tests, even if I was very tempted. And I was tempted at different times on tests. I liked tests through high school. They were lots of fun. I liked proving how much smarter I was than everybody else in the world. That was lots of fun. And then in college, halfway through my sophomore year, my dad died. And when I came back from that awful trauma to school, I was late and behind on things, and I developed this profound test anxiety. I really scared myself with tests. And I also misread them, misinterpreted them, sort of panicked during them. It was awful. And it really affected my life in many ways. It taught me sympathy for young people who get really scared, who get anxious during testing. So I feel that great sympathy, but I want to make some recommendations to teachers who catch kids cheating on a test. Bust them! You have to bust them. If you catch them cheating on a test, you got to take the test and throw it away and give it a 0. You got to bust them. If you catch them red-handed, you got to bust them. Mr. Nix couldn't catch me red-handed. I made sure of that because I had a little con man's mind. But had he caught me red-handed, he would have busted me, and he would have rightly done so. The earlier you can bust a cheater and bust them hard, the better off they are because they're less tempted to do it. If you have a student, every once in a while a student will pull this thing where he's sick on test day and he wants to take a makeup test. Always make the makeup test more stringent than the test. Makeup tests can be essay form, they can be different than the original test, or they can be of the same form, but they should be more stringent. Not hugely noticeably so, but enough so that students know that skipping out on the test and taking the alternate test is not going to yield them a higher grade, even if they discuss it with other students. The last thing I'm going to suggest is something that I came up with fairly late in my career. Not fairly late, 2/3 of the way through. I knew that the biggest way that students cheat on tests is students with the earlier class discuss the test with later class kids. So, whenever I gave a test to students that I knew they would be tempted to discuss with other students, I would say this: I want you to tell anyone who asks you about this test, say, I love you too much to engage in such toxic behavior. And I'd make the kids say it back to me. I love you too much to engage in such toxic behavior. Now, I know full well it didn't stop all the discussions, but it made them acknowledge that by sharing test information and cheating on tests, they were engaging in poisonous behavior. Cheating is poisonous. Cheating on tests is not only poisonous, but it works a teacher far too hard, harder than they should have to work to see how students are doing with the content. Students should play the game fairly, and teachers should too. Of course, the best solution to preventing kids from cheating on tests is preventing kids from cheating on tests. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about some methods you can use that will take the likelihood of test cheating down quite a bit. You'll never fully solve it, and you'll never catch everyone. Some students are just determined to cheat on tests. The big thing is, if you catch them, you bust them, okay? If you catch them, you bust them. It might be the favorite students you have, it might be the sweetest, smartest students you have. If you catch them testing, you have to bust them. And you have to bust them hard. At least a 0 on the test, if not a disciplinary referral and punishment of some sort. Bust them. That's it for today. I hope you have a glorious rest of the day. And tomorrow we'll discuss ways of trying to minimize test cheating if we can. I hope you see me soon. You gorgeous people.